Here we are now in this final session, and I want to talk about 10 effects of believing these things. I hope I can address a few of the things that have been asked me. I don't know where it might fit, so I'm going to say it right now. Somebody asked me about, are you going to say anything about hyper-Calvinism? So let me say a word about it. I'll define it, and then I'll say why I'm not it. Hyper-Calvinism doesn't mean serious, real Calvinists, like seven-pointers. That's not what hyper-Calvinism is. A technical phrase from the 18th century. And it referred, especially to people in England, who carried the doctrine of election and irresistible grace to an unbiblical conclusion, namely, that the only people to whom you should preach the gospel and offer its benefits are those in whom you see evidences of election. Because they're the only ones for whom it will work. Wrong. Bad conclusion. And the main opponent was Andrew Fuller. And his main book in response to hyper-Calvinism was Gospel Worthy of All Acceptance. Read it. You can get all of his works. In which he argued, no way does Calvinism imply you should only preach the gospel to those in whom you see some evidences of election. It's not a whiff in the Bible to imply that. You preach the gospel indiscriminately to everyone. Whosoever will, let him come. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. You open the door, I'll come in. That's not the whole story. It's just a true story. So, I'm not a hyper-Calvinist. I hate hyper-Calvinism. There aren't many around today. But it's an example of human logic trumping biblical clarity. Arminians are prone to this. Calvinists are prone to this. Anybody who is loving to see things fit together coherently can fall prey to the being led by logic, not being led by exegesis. And the way we've approached this seminar is at least an effort to be governed by texts, not by, well, if this is true, then this must be true, and this must be true, and this must be true, and so that's why we believe in limited atonement. I heard that argument so many times that Calvinists are driven by their ironclad logic to unbiblical conclusions. I said, well, that's what I see in Arminianism, but I don't see it here. History will judge whether that's what's governing me or not. Number one, these truths, I'm just talking about TULIP and all of the worldview surrounding it. These truths make me stand in awe of God and lead me into the depth of true God-centered worship. I recall the time I first saw, while teaching Ephesians at Bethel, the late 70s, that threefold statement of the goal of God's work, namely, to the praise of the glory of His grace. That's why we're created, that's why we're redeemed, that's why everything exists, to bring praise to the glory of the grace of God, supremely manifest in Jesus. It has led me to see we cannot enrich God, and therefore His glory shines most brightly not when we try to meet His needs, but when we are satisfied in Him as the essence of our needs. From him and through him and to him are all things. To him be glory forever. Worship becomes an end in itself. It has made me feel how low and inadequate are my affections, so that the psalms of longing come alive and make worship intense. The point of all that is this. Worship in America, I would say, in general, is fairly flippant. Most churches. It's just kind of entertainment-like and cavalier. It's kind of like watching country western show. Cool songs, neat rhythm. Everybody's with you, kind of. But there's a flavor of the weight of glory missing. And my point is, these doctrines move you in another direction. It's not a style issue. It's really not. Though it does have some effect on the way drums are used, guitars are used, organs are used. It does have some effect. But I don't want you to jump to the conclusion, well, if you're really serious, then you do Handel's Messiah every Sunday. And you would never, ever use a guitar. It's kind of homespun, down, low. No. You can be as worldly and superficial and man-centered while singing the Hallelujah chorus as when you sing something as simple as Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. I have heard that song mocked so many times. A mantra. It's a mantra. It's an evangelical mantra. I said, well, it isn't a mantra if you weave it into substance the way it should be woven in. And there comes a moment in the service when much riches have been spoken or read or prayed or preached, and all you should do is for a season say, Hallelujah. But thinking through those things will be helped by what you believe about God. And I'm afraid, by and large, the American church is pervasively Arminian, and therefore light. Number 2, these truths help protect me from trifling with divine things. One of the curses of our culture in America is banality, cuteness, cleverness. Television is perhaps the main sustainer of our addiction to superficiality and triviality. God is dragged into this, hence the trifling with divine things. My beef with television, I don't have a television. I haven't had a television for 40 years, except for 3 years in Germany when we used it to learn German. The issue for me is not mainly sex and violence. That has its problems, but it's banality. You just got to realize how vulnerable I am to banter. I just can get sucked in so easily to repartee and sounding clever and talking and getting the last word and using puns, and I just am a sucker. So what can I do to guard myself? Because if I go there, of what use will I be to anybody except here's another entertainer? We don't need another entertainer. I couldn't compete with the best Joel Osteens if I wanted to. That's not what I'm after.